One of the things that I've noticed is that a lot of people don't understand diabetes. They don't know what it is.
Type 1 diabetes is an autoimmune disorder, and that means that your own body's immune system has destroyed the cells in the pancreas, which is an organ that's right by your stomach, and that organ has a lot of jobs, but one of its really important jobs is to make insulin. So the immune system destroys those cells that make insulin. So it's not caused by eating too much or not exercising or being overweight. Your body has now destroyed the cells that make insulin, and you need insulin to live.
When diabetes is not diagnosed, the blood sugars continue to rise to dangerous and life-threatening levels. We need to diagnose it as early as possible.
One of the problems is all the symptoms of diabetes and new onset show up with so many other things. You know, if you have someone that's going to the bathroom a lot, parents just think they have a urinary tract infection. So we'll give them some cranberry juice or see if this resolves itself, and you don't see that. You know, they start throwing up because of all the acid in their system, and they think, oh, we just got a stomach virus from little Susie that you sit next to in class, so they don't get it, they don't take them to the doctor. They wait a few days, which sometimes can be now putting that child's life at risk.
In my articles, I did a thing called a town hall survey. Over 560 parents took the survey. So it was kind of had some sort of teeth to it. Just over half of the people who took that survey, whose kids were diagnosed in DKA, had been to a medical professional and they were sent home. That tells us there's a situation. Let's be real clear on a very important part. God bless our medical community. They are the experts, they are out there, but they're not perfect. Neither are we as parents. Together, we can start to look for these warning signs and say, listen, just let's do a check for diabetes. If it's not, I'll go home. I know of at least this year 7 children who have passed away, just in 2016, because their blood sugars raised so high that they went into ketoacidosis, went into a coma, and passed away. You say to yourself, why wasn't this avoidable? That's what gets everybody so angry. You know, I mean, it's a simple procedure. So let's start asking for it. Let's start giving it when we see those signs. That, to me, is what this is all about.
Josh and I have been married for 15 years, and we have 5 boys and 1 little girl.
And after each boy, after the first boy and the second boy, and Jamie's like, we gotta have a girl, we've gotta have a girl. So, all right, we can try again. So we have another boy, and so then we had 3, and she's like, please, 1 more. And I'm like, okay, we'll go 1 more. So we had, and it was another boy, and she cried for a little bit. And when we found out we were pregnant with the little girl, we were very excited. From the very beginning, Kycie just always had our hearts.
She was full of energy. She loved to, you know, she did dancing for a couple years, and then she did cheerleading. She was super smart. Her teacher would tell us all the time how well she was doing in school, and she loved to learn. Every morning she'd ask if it was school day.
She loved to learn, and which is one of the reasons we knew that when she got sick, that she had to be really sick, because it was a Monday, and she says, I don't want to go to school today. I don't feel good to go to school. And we realized, oh, that's unusual. And we thought she had a stomach flu, and so, you know, she didn't ever ask for water. She didn't, because we just gave it to her. We just kept giving her a Sprite or water and just kept it full for her.
I finally took her into our family doctor here in town. Her brother had also stayed home from school on that Wednesday, so I ended up taking him to the doctor too. And he looked her over, kind of, asked what her signs and symptoms were, and Daxton had complained of a sore throat. And he looked at Daxton's throat, and he's like, you know what? He's got strep throat. So he diagnosed them both with strep throat and gave us antibiotics for both of them. And I remember leaving that day and telling Josh, I'm like, it's so weird because she's complained of a lot of things, but not a sore throat.
I remember I was at work, and Jamie called and says, you know, Daxton's already back to school. She seems to be doing worse. And I said, well, you need to give it more time, and because she had just started the antibiotic. I got home late that night, and I remember she was just sleeping. And so I sat her up and I put her at the table there, and I'm like, please, Kycie, and I got her a bowl of cereal. And I'm like, please eat this, and she just wouldn't. And so I got and I looked in her mouth, and her mouth was full, and it was green. And so I called the dentist, and why is it green? Well, did she start an antibiotic recently? Yeah, she did. Okay, and then I got her in for the bath, and that's when I noticed that she'd lost a lot of weight. So when I take her shirt off to get her in the bath, I'm like, my goodness, she's just skin and bones. That night she threw up probably 6 or 7 times. I kind of started, this is something different. And so I said, Jamie, first thing in the morning you get in there and you just go right to their office and just say, you're seeing us, I don't care.
And that was when he just, he looked in her mouth and he says, it's not strep throat. He gave me a few options. He's like, well, you give it another day. He's like, you could go put her in the hospital and get her hydrated, or you could go to the ER. I just said to him, I'm like, she's just so sick. Like, I'm not gonna do this one more day. And so we were literally like packing her into the ER at this point because she just had no energy.
They called us back and they sat us down, and I started to tell them, this is what happened, this is where we're at. And it clicked to me as I was telling the doctor what the signs were. I'm like, oh my gosh, it's diabetes, it's type 1 diabetes. And he said the same thing.
Yeah, he knew right away.
He said, I think it's type 1. And I had an MRI scheduled for a month. And so I ran just down the hall to get an MRI, and I was on the table, they were ready to wheel me into the thing, and my phone rang twice. And so they give it to me, and Jamie's crying, and she said that they were life flighting her. That was a shock to me, because I'm like, why? It's diabetes. Why are you life flighting for diabetes? I don't get this. And she says she's really sick, and they've got to life flight her. They have to take you by ambulance over to the airport. And so Jamie and Kycie got on the ambulance, and I just gave her a kiss and said, I love her, and I'll see you in a little bit.
Once we landed in Salt Lake, we had to land at the airport. And so we landed and they got us put into the ambulance, and they just said from there, they're like, it's about a 20-minute ride to the hospital. We'd only been gone about 5 minutes when she started seizing. And then once we arrived at Primary Children's, she seized again.
Kycie was unresponsive. She was in a coma. When Jamie called me when she had her seizure, I was still almost 3.5 hours away. When I got up there, they told me that she's in a diabetic coma, and that in these cases usually they wake up in anywhere from 6 hours to 24 hours later. And so the two of us sat by her, and we waited in 6 hours, 12 hours, and at 24 hours they came and said that they'd like to do an MRI. The neurologist just pulled up the MRI, and he said that this was horrible. It's just the worst news is that she had suffered a brain herniation into her brain stem. So when the pressure in her brain got so high because of the DKA and the cerebral edema, it pushed the brain down into the brain stem, and then it choked off all the blood supply. So she had strokes all the way up through her brain. And so they said, I don't think she's going to make it. Jamie and I sat next to Kycie, and we promised her and said, if you will fight, we'll fight with you. And if she wants to go, then we'll let her go. That night, we made a post on Instagram, and we just asked everyone to pray and to ask Kycie to open her eyes. And so the next morning she did. She opened her eyes, and I think that was a big turning point. That's when we're like, okay, wait a second, she is gonna fight. There was people that just rallied around us from our town, our neighborhood, our friends and our family. We got so much information and so much communication with that online diabetic community. And then her story just took off, and we just would post on like our Instagram account, and someone created the Kisses for Kycie Facebook page. I think there was like 6,000 or 7,000 followers before we even knew there was such a page. However, we really hadn't even taken care of a diabetic yet. In the hospital, if there was ever an issue, it was just you called the endocrinologist and they walked in the room. It wasn't ever an issue. So we were in the neuro and trauma unit who works with brain injury, but they'd never had a brain injured child who has type 1 diabetes either. And so they didn't, for the very beginning, they didn't know what to do with this. They're like, well, you need to be upstairs on the medical unit so they can treat your diabetes. And the medical unit's like, we don't treat brain injuries. You need to be downstairs on the neuro and trauma unit. And so they didn't know where to put us. And we ended up on the neuro and trauma unit. And I know the nurses were very uncomfortable. They're like, I don't do diabetes. I don't know how to do this. And so the nurses got really good at it too. And Jamie just says, I'll do it. She's like, I'll give the shots, I'll give the injections, I'll check the sugars. And that complicated things too, because they're, well, technically you can't because,
The very first post I made, I took a picture of Kycie at the hospital here in St. George, and it says, Kycie has very bad diabetes, and we're getting life-flighted. And I'm like, very bad. I don't know if that's the right way to put it. You just have it, you know? I had no clue the difference between 1 and 2. I was thinking in my head of all the food we were gonna have to cut out in our family, and I had no idea what it was.
I had no clue, didn't know how serious it was. Because at the time it was like, oh, at least it's not cancer, we're good. I didn't know it could cause brain damage. I didn't know that we were gonna be in the hospital for over 100 days in a row. I didn't know it could kill you.
She's just a fighter. Like, she has shown us for all these months what a fighter she is, and now she's shown us yet again. On that Friday night, it was just the 2 of us. We got her settled in for bed, and I had her little pulse off on her finger watching it, and it just kept dropping. It just kept getting lower, and I'm like, what is going on? And so he picked her up in his lap and was holding her, and you know, he's looking at it, and he's like, Jane, we need to go to the hospital. It's low enough.
So I was holding her, and Kycie, because of her brain injury, it made her turn like this, and so she was always turned like this. And so as I was holding her, she was turned away from me, and just as Jamie came in and clicked on the light, she sat up and she turned back, and she turned and she looked right at me. You know, I just knew that she was going. We all want to be positive, and we want to look at the good of things. And sometimes by doing that, though, we forget how serious a condition it really is. And so you look at a picture and you see this little girl with curly blonde hair, blue eyes, who's full of life and full and exciting. And in 5 days, she has severe brain damage. Kids get sick, think about that, keep that in the back of your mind. Is this something like that happened to that little girl, Kycie? Is this, you know, could it be that? It might not, probably isn't, but could it be?
We want to continue to raise awareness and continue to keep her face on that awareness, because people see her face on something and they're drawn to it. That's kind of our mission, is to continue to keep spreading awareness, and hopefully it helps, even if it helps one person.
I know that Kycie is our guardian angel. She's her brother's guardian angel. We talk about that with them all the time. We've got a lot of posts and messages and emails from people from around Utah and around the United States and even around the world that talk about that they feel like Kycie's their guardian angel. I can see Kycie with all these little kids that have diabetes, and even adolescents and even adults that have type 1 diabetes, and that she was so positive, and you can just see her. You can do this. You can do this. This is, you work harder, keep going, and be who you want to be. You can do whatever you want to do. Just manage it the best you can, and you can do it. She never gave up. That's what's so neat about children, because I think giving up is a learned trait. It's something that adults have learned to do, and kids don't know how to give up. They just go until they can't go anymore.
We're grateful we had her, you know, for those 5 years, because she was so perfect, and We miss her like crazy, but we truly believe that Kycie had a big mission while she was here on earth, and that, you know, she still has a mission. She's still, you know, helping spread awareness, and we know that she was sent here for a reason, and she had a purpose, and a really big purpose.